Has Meghan Markle finally met her most relentless critic? Donald Trump has never held back his opinions, but his latest remarks about Meghan and Prince Harry take things to an entirely new level. From publicly dismissing Meghan on live television to questioning Harry's immigration status, Trump's criticism has ignited fresh debates about privilege, politics, and power. But how did this feud begin? Why does Trump believe Meghan has manipulated Harry? And could his warning about Harry's U.S. visa lead to real legal consequences? Let's get into details. Donald Trump has never been one to hold back, and when it comes to Meghan Markle, his words have been nothing short of brutal. Over the years, his criticism of the Duchess of Sussex has only intensified, culminating in a televised moment that left no doubt Trump wants nothing to do with Meghan Markle. It was a public rejection that made headlines across the world, sending a clear message about how he feels about her influence on Prince Harry. The tension between Trump and Meghan didn't start overnight. It began brewing in early 2020, when Meghan and Prince Harry stepped away from their royal duties and moved to the United States. Almost immediately, they became entangled in American politics, something that did not sit well with Trump. During a virtual appearance later that year, Meghan and Harry encouraged Americans to vote for what they described as decency, a comment widely interpreted as a subtle endorsement of Joe Biden. The response from Trump was swift. Just days after their comments, during a White House press briefing in September 2020, Trump made it clear that he was not a fan of Meghan. When asked about their remarks, he smirked and responded, "I'm not a fan of hers, and I would say this, and she's probably heard that, but I wish a lot of luck to Harry because he's going to need it." That statement alone sent shockwaves through the media. It wasn't just a passing comment, it was a firm and public dismissal of Meghan Markle. The world took notice. Trump was setting the stage for what would become an ongoing war of words between him and the Sussexes. The remark was not just about politics, it was personal. Trump had drawn his line, and it was clear that he believed Meghan had been a negative influence on Prince Harry. More than a year later, in December 2021, Trump doubled down on his criticism during an exclusive interview with Nigel Farage. This time, he was even more direct. He accused Meghan of using Harry and suggested that she had damaged his relationship with the royal family beyond repair. According to Trump, the way Meghan had handled their royal exit was disgraceful and deeply disrespectful to Queen Elizabeth. "I think Harry has been used horribly, and I think someday he will regret it," Trump stated. "I think it has ruined his relationship with his family, and it's really hurt the Queen." Trump's words were a clear attack on Meghan, but they also showed sympathy for Prince Harry. He portrayed him as someone who had been manipulated, someone who had lost himself in the process. Trump was positioning himself as a defender of traditional royal values, and in his view, Meghan was the one to blame for tearing Harry away from them. By April 2022, Trump was ready to escalate things even further. During an interview with Piers Morgan, he took the gloves off. When asked about Meghan and Harry's relationship, he made one of his most controversial remarks to date. "Harry is whipped like no person I think I've ever seen," Trump said bluntly. The statement was cutting, and it left no room for misinterpretation. Trump was suggesting that Harry had lost all sense of independence, that he was completely under Meghan's control. He went on to predict that their marriage would not last, implying that Meghan would eventually leave Harry once she no longer had use for him. "He's being used," Trump continued, "and I think it's a shame." These words once again ignited media debates across both the United States and the United Kingdom. Was Trump simply speaking his mind, or was this a calculated move to insert himself into the ongoing royal drama? Regardless of the intent, his words resonated with a large audience. To some, Trump was voicing what many already believed about Meghan's influence over Harry. To others, he was unfairly targeting a woman who had already faced relentless criticism since joining the royal family. But Trump wasn't done yet. By the time May 2023 rolled around, he delivered one of his coldest rejections of Meghan Markle yet, this time live on television. During a Fox News appearance, a host brought up Meghan's name, seemingly expecting a long-winded response from Trump. Instead, he simply shook his head and smirked. "I don't want to talk about her," he said dismissively. "I think we've said enough." That moment alone was enough to reignite the discussion about their ongoing feud. Trump had spent years openly attacking Meghan, calling her disrespectful, manipulative, and even predicting the downfall of her marriage. But now, He was doing something different. He was brushing her off entirely. It was the ultimate form of rejection, a way of making it clear that Meghan was no longer worth discussing in his eyes. The public reaction to Trump's words was immediate. His supporters saw it as a final, definitive stance against Meghan, a sign that he was done entertaining any discussion about her. On the other hand, critics argued that this was just another example of Trump's long history of targeting powerful women who dared to speak out against him. Interestingly, Meghan and Harry did not directly respond to Trump's remarks. Instead, they continued focusing on their personal projects, including their Netflix and Spotify deals, their philanthropy, and Meghan's advocacy work. Sources close to the couple have suggested that Meghan sees Trump's ongoing attacks as a political strategy, a way for him to appeal to his base ahead of the 2024 election. Despite Meghan's silence, one thing is clear: Trump's words have had a lasting impact. His rejection of Meghan Markle, particularly in that moment on live television, was not just about personal dislike. It was a reflection of a deeper cultural divide, one that pits traditionalist figures like Trump against those who challenge royal and political norms. But while this rejection was harsh, it was far from the end of Trump's remarks about Meghan and Harry. His next comments would be even more shocking. He would not only continue to attack Meghan, but also predict a future where Harry would be left alone, regretting everything. The feud was far from over, and Trump had more to say. Donald Trump's feud with Meghan Markle had already been making headlines, but his comments about Prince Harry's relationship with her took things to a whole new level. If his past remarks had been blunt, what came next was even more controversial. Trump not only criticized Meghan's influence over Harry, but he also made a bold prediction about their future, one that left the media buzzing and royal watchers divided. During his April 2022 interview with Piers Morgan, Trump didn't hold back when discussing the dynamics of Harry and Meghan's marriage. His words were direct and unapologetic, claiming that Prince Harry was no longer the man he once was. According to Trump, Meghan had completely taken control of Harry's life, leading him away from his family, traditions, and everything that once defined him. Then came the statement that sent shockwaves through both sides of the Atlantic. Trump suggested that Meghan would eventually leave Harry, implying that she was using him to boost her own status and personal goals. He added that once she had gotten everything she wanted, she would move on to something else, leaving Harry behind. This wasn't just an offhand remark. Trump had voiced a belief that many of his supporters and royal critics had hinted at for years. The idea that Meghan was strategically advancing her own brand while slowly distancing Harry from his roots was something tabloids had speculated about extensively. But coming from Trump, a former U.S. president, the claim carried much more weight. Whether people agreed with him or not, they couldn't ignore the confidence with which he made these statements. Public reactions varied. Trump's supporters saw his words as a blunt but honest take on a situation that had been unfolding ever since Harry and Meghan's departure from royal duties. They believed Trump was simply saying out loud what many royal insiders had been whispering about for years. Others, however, saw it as yet another unnecessary attack on Meghan, accusing Trump of playing into a divisive narrative that unfairly portrayed her as manipulative and power-hungry. Regardless of the differing opinions, the media coverage following the interview ensured that the controversy wouldn't die down anytime soon. While Trump's remarks about Meghan's potential plans for the future grabbed attention, his views on Harry's transformation were equally striking. In his usual straightforward manner, he claimed that Harry had gone from being an independent and respected royal figure to someone who had completely lost his identity. According to Trump, Harry was no longer thinking for himself and was instead following Meghan's lead without question. This, he argued, was not the Prince Harry that people once knew. Adding to the controversy, Trump also pointed out the strained relationship between Harry and the royal family. He spoke about how the Queen had been deeply disappointed by Harry's actions, a sentiment he claimed to have heard firsthand during his meetings with her. Although there was no official confirmation of these private conversations, Trump maintained that he and the Queen had discussed the challenges she faced with Harry's decisions. He suggested that the Queen had been saddened by how events had unfolded, particularly with the way Harry and Meghan chose to handle their departure from royal life. The growing divide between Harry and his family had already been evident for some time, and Trump's comments only fueled further speculation about whether a reconciliation would ever be possible. With every interview, the tension seemed to grow, and the former president was making it clear that he had no plans to stop sharing his thoughts on the matter. But while many expected his criticism of Meghan and Harry to eventually die down, Trump had one more major statement to make, one that would set off a new round of debates and scrutiny. During a later interview, Trump made a comment that many saw as a direct challenge to the stability of Meghan and Harry's relationship. He suggested that once Meghan was done with the marriage, she would move on to something bigger and better, and when that happened, Harry would find himself lost, regretting the choices he had made. It was a harsh statement, but one that aligned with Trump's repeated insistence that Harry had been manipulated into making irreversible decisions. He painted a picture of a future where Harry, once known for his confident and adventurous spirit, would be left picking up the pieces after Meghan walked away. This prediction triggered a storm of reactions. Royal commentators weighed in, debating whether Trump was merely speculating or if his remarks reflected real concerns about the relationship. Some analysts pointed out that high-profile marriages often come under extreme pressure, and Harry and Meghan's had been no exception. The couple had faced relentless media scrutiny since the beginning, with every public appearance and decision analyzed under a microscope. Could Trump's words be an exaggeration, or was he tapping into a truth that many people suspected but didn't want to say out loud? While these discussions dominated the media, Harry and Meghan remained focused on their own endeavors. At no point did they publicly acknowledge Trump's comments, a strategy that some believed was intentional. By refusing to engage, they avoided fueling further controversy and gave the impression that they were above responding to political figures who sought to use their names for attention. Still, silence did not mean the controversy faded away. If anything, it only increased curiosity about how they truly felt about the situation. Trump's words had stirred up another round of speculation, but one thing was clear. This was far from the last time he would speak about the Sussexes. His ongoing public criticism showed that he viewed their decisions as not just a royal issue, but something that reflected larger cultural and political debates. And while he had already made strong statements about Meghan's influence and Harry's future, there was still another angle he was ready to explore, one that could have even more serious consequences. The focus would soon shift from their personal lives to something much more significant: Harry's status in the United States. In the coming months, Trump would turn his attention to the Duke of Sussex's immigration situation, raising questions about whether Harry had been truthful in his visa application. If what Trump suggested was true, it could put Harry's American residency in jeopardy, adding a whole new layer of tension to the already heated feud. The conversation was about to take a legal turn, and this time, it wasn't just about words. It was about actions that could change everything. Trump's criticism of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry had already stirred intense debates, but his focus was about to shift to something even more consequential. Beyond just personal attacks and predictions about their marriage, Trump began raising questions about Prince Harry's immigration status in the United States. This wasn't just about opinions anymore. If what Trump suggested was true, it could have legal consequences that might force the Duke of Sussex to rethink his future in America. During interviews in 2023, Trump hinted that Prince Harry's visa status could be a potential issue, particularly after revelations in his memoir, Spare. In the book, Harry openly admitted to past drug use, a confession that raised legal concerns. Under U.S. immigration laws, visa applicants are required to disclose any history of drug use. If they fail to do so, they could face serious consequences, including denial of entry or even revocation of their visa. Trump wasted no time pointing this out, stating that Harry should not receive special treatment if he had been dishonest on his application. If he wasn't truthful, he won't get special treatment, Trump declared in an interview, making it clear that, in his view, the rules should apply to everyone, including a member of the British royal family. His remarks set off a wave of speculation, with many questioning whether Harry had indeed been fully transparent in his visa application. The controversy gained traction when conservative groups in the United States began calling for an investigation into Harry's immigration records. Some legal analysts weighed in, noting that while admitting past drug use does not automatically lead to visa rejection, failing to disclose it could be grounds for serious legal repercussions. The Biden administration, however, remained silent on the matter, neither confirming nor denying whether Harry's visa status was being reviewed. The debate quickly turned political. Trump's supporters saw this as yet another example of what they viewed as double standards in the U.S. immigration system, arguing that powerful figures like Prince Harry could bend the rules while ordinary applicants face strict enforcement. On the other hand, critics accused Trump of using Harry as a political talking point, a distraction from larger immigration issues that had dominated his past presidency. Meanwhile, the controversy put Harry in an awkward position. He and Meghan had spent the past few years building a new life in California, far from the royal obligations that had once defined them. They had secured major media deals, built partnerships with major brands, and appeared to be settling into a new chapter outside the constraints of the British monarchy. However, the idea that Harry's visa status could come under scrutiny added a layer of uncertainty to their future in the United States. While Trump did not explicitly call for Harry's deportation, his comments fueled widespread discussions about whether the former president, if re-elected, might take action on the matter. Some right-wing commentators even suggested that Harry should be forced to leave the country if he had indeed misrepresented himself on official documents. The legal complexity of the situation made it difficult to predict any actual consequences, but the narrative had already taken hold in public discourse. Despite the growing media storm, Harry and Meghan chose to remain silent, neither addressing the visa controversy nor responding to Trump's latest remarks. Their silence, however, did little to stop the speculation. The story continued to gain momentum, with journalists and political commentators debating whether this was a legitimate legal issue or simply a way for Trump to keep the spotlight on the Sussex. Adding to the uncertainty, some reports suggested that Harry and Meghan had been exploring alternative residency options outside of the United States. Portugal was mentioned as a potential option, with speculation that they were considering purchasing property there. Whether this was simply a backup plan or an indication that they were preparing for a potential exit from the U.S. remained unclear, but it certainly raised more questions about their long-term future. Trump's remarks had once again dominated headlines, proving that his feud with Meghan and Harry was far from over. But this time, his words carried more weight than before. It was no longer just about public perception or personal opinions. It was about real-world consequences. If the visa issue continued to gain traction, it could create serious legal and political complications for Prince Harry, forcing him to confront the reality of his position in the U.S. The feud was now evolving into something far more significant. What had started as a war of words was beginning to cross into the realm of policy and immigration law. And with Trump continuing to speak on the matter, it was clear that this battle was not going away anytime soon. The question now was whether Harry and Meghan would finally address the controversy head-on, or if they would continue to remain silent as the pressure around them continued to build. As speculation about Prince Harry's visa status continued to dominate headlines, the controversy only deepened with growing demands for transparency. Legal analysts and conservative groups began pushing for the U.S. government to release details about Harry's immigration records, arguing that the American public had the right to know whether he had received preferential treatment. Trump's remarks had ignited a political storm, and his allies were not letting the issue fade away. The pressure on the Biden administration to respond intensified when Freedom of Information Act requests were filed to obtain details about Harry's visa application. While U.S. immigration laws protect an individual's privacy, some argued that Harry's case warranted special scrutiny due to his high-profile status and past admissions of drug use. Trump's supporters used this as an opportunity to highlight what they saw as double standards, pointing out that ordinary visa applicants would face serious consequences if they failed to disclose such information. The debate extended beyond legal discussions, becoming a larger political issue tied to Trump's border immigration stance. Throughout his presidency, Trump had taken a hardline approach to immigration, emphasizing strict enforcement and tough policies on non-citizens who violated U.S. laws. His criticism of Harry was, to many, an extension of this platform, reinforcing his view that no one, royalty included, should be above the rules. Despite the increasing scrutiny, there was no official confirmation that Harry's visa was under review. Immigration experts weighed in, explaining that while failing to disclose past drug use could be a serious issue, it was unlikely that the U.S. government would take immediate action without direct evidence of a violation. They also pointed out that many individuals who admit to past drug use in public statements are not necessarily penalized unless they misrepresented themselves on official documents. This meant that unless there was a formal investigation, the controversy would likely remain political rather than legal. Harry and Meghan, meanwhile, maintained their silence. While they continued with their public engagements and charity work, they made no effort to address the mounting speculation about Harry's visa status. Their refusal to respond only fueled more questions. Some interpreted their silence as an attempt to avoid legitimizing Trump's attacks, while others speculated that they were weighing their legal options before making any public statements. Regardless of the reason, the lack of clarity only kept the controversy alive. Trump, however, was not done speaking on the matter. During a public appearance in early 2024, he was asked once again about Prince Harry's situation. Smirking, he reiterated his position that if Harry had been dishonest on his visa application, he should face the consequences just like anyone else. His remarks were met with applause from his audience, reinforcing how the issue had become a rallying point for many of his supporters. Meanwhile, discussions about Harry and Meghan's long-term residency continued. Reports surfaced suggesting that the couple had been quietly exploring other options outside of the United States, with Portugal being mentioned as a possible destination. This led to speculation that they were preparing for a potential move should the situation in the U.S. become untenable. However, without confirmation from their representatives, these remained rumors, adding another layer of intrigue to the ongoing debate. The situation also prompted reactions from royal commentators in the United Kingdom. Some saw Trump's remarks as further evidence of the Sussexes' increasingly strained position both in the UK and the US. Others viewed the controversy as an example of the ongoing media obsession with Meghan and Harry, arguing that their every move continued to be politicized despite their efforts to distance themselves from the royal institution. With Trump gearing up for another presidential run, it was clear that he would continue to use Meghan and Harry as political talking points. Whether the visa issue would become a serious legal matter or remain a source of political theater was still uncertain. However, one thing was undeniable. Trump's words had reignited debates not just about Harry and Meghan, but about immigration, privilege, and political influence in the United States. The ongoing scrutiny had placed Harry in a delicate position. While he and Meghan had initially hoped to build a new life free from royal constraints, they now found themselves at the center of a new controversy, one that had nothing to do with the monarchy but everything to do with American politics. The growing calls for transparency and the potential legal ramifications of Trump's remarks meant that this issue was far from over. With Trump continuing to voice his opinions and the media closely following every development, it was only a matter of time before more questions were raised. Would Harry be forced to clarify his immigration status? Would the U.S. government be pressured into taking action? Or would this all fade into another chapter of the ongoing public battle between Trump and the Sussexes? Whatever the outcome, the controversy was set to linger, keeping Harry and Meghan in the headlines for the foreseeable future. As the controversy surrounding Prince Harry's visa status continued to make headlines, it became clear that the issue had taken on a life of its own. What had started as a political talking point from Trump had now evolved into a broader debate about immigration policies, privilege, and transparency. While the Biden administration maintained its silence on the matter, conservative figures and legal analysts continued to press for answers. The pressure on U.S. authorities to confirm whether Harry had been truthful in his application remained a focal point, but without any official statements, speculation ran wild. Trump, sensing the political capital in the situation, continued to reference Harry and Meghan in his public speeches. He portrayed the issue as another example of what he called the double standards in America's immigration system. His supporters cheered him on, viewing the controversy as further proof that elite figures receive different treatment compared to ordinary citizens. Whether or not any formal investigation into Harry's immigration status would take place, Trump had successfully kept the topic alive, using it to strengthen his argument for stricter policies. Despite the relentless speculation, Harry and Meghan remained focused on their own projects, avoiding any direct engagement with the ongoing narrative. Some viewed this silence as a deliberate strategy to keep from giving Trump more ammunition, while others speculated that they were waiting for the controversy to die down on its own. Either way, their lack of response did little to curb the growing discussions about their future in the United States. As reports continued to circulate about their possible interest in Portugal, some began to question whether the couple was preparing an alternative plan should their residency in the U.S. come under scrutiny. Royal experts in the United Kingdom weighed in on the situation, noting how unusual it was for a member of the royal family to be caught up in an American political debate of this scale. While Harry and Meghan had long distanced themselves from royal duties, their every move still seemed to invite intense scrutiny. Some commentators suggested that Harry's immigration controversy was emblematic of the broader challenges he and Meghan faced in carving out a new identity outside of the royal institution. They were no longer bound by royal protocol, but they were also no longer shielded by it. Meanwhile, Meghan continued to focus on her media ventures and philanthropic work, appearing at various events and maintaining her public profile. While she did not directly address Trump's remarks, there were subtle signs that she was aware of them. During a speech at a women's empowerment event, she spoke about the importance of resilience and tuning out negativity, a statement that some saw as an indirect response to the ongoing criticisms. Whether intended or not, it only fueled further speculation about how she and Harry were handling the mounting pressure. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.